So this golf grip is about 20 years old. The rubber's quite hard and stiff. So what I'll do is I will take a foam sanding block and about 120 grit sandpaper to rejuvenate this. I'll sand it. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to sand off the old dried out hardened rubber, and I'm going to try to get back down to the maybe some of the softer virgin material that's underneath that. Grab my sanding tool here and block and my sandpaper and start sanding. And as you can see, I'm starting to remove some of the rubber. It still needs to be sanded a bit more. Keep going. It's starting to feel a little bit better. It's starting to feel like the original softer rubber. So now I'm going to rinse off the rubber particles with some water. Grab a cloth, dry it off, and I will show you the next step. So if after you do all that work the golf club still feels kind of dry, there's something else that you can try. Now I've tried silicone lubricant, I've tried Armor All, I've tried all sorts of different things on the rubber. The problem is they just make the handle way too slippery afterwards. What I found actually works fairly good is this. It's called a pure vegetable based glycerin USB 99.5% anhydrous. So it's just a type of oil and it won't degrade the rubber because it's vegetable based. And I bought this at a drugstore. Now all you have to do with this is you just take a little bit and you take a few drops of this, apply it to the handle, and apply it fairly generously, and then just rub it on. You know, you might have to leave it soak for a little bit and then give it another coat. And what I would do is I'd leave this for a week or two just on there, and the longer you can leave it on the better. I mean, if you can leave it over a season when you're not using the clubs, that's probably the best. And then you just leave that soak in, and I'll do that, and I'll come back and I'll show you what I do after that before I use the club. Now it's been a few days later here, and some of that oil sort of soaked in. It's still on there. You couldn't golf with this. But what I do is I grab like a rag here and give it a good rub, and you kind of feel it. It still feels a little slippery. You got to give it another good rub. You do that, you know. I'd bring a rag like this along to the golf course. But it starts to get as you start to use it, it starts to get kind of sticky. So that's just a good way to extend the use of your clubs and continue to use the original grips. Hopefully that's helped you. So this is a optional method you can use to sand your grips down. This is actually a bit quicker, but you have to have access, of course, to a lathe to do it. So this is just a air grinder with a 80 grit flapper wheel that's on there, and I'll show you how I use that. I'm putting the golf club into lathe. I've got the lathe set at a very low RPM, and I don't put a lot of pressure on the chuck because that could bend the tube that's supporting your golf club. Now I'm taking the flapper wheel, and we're going to just remove the old material off of the I've removed the old, dried out the rubber. Now we're down to more softer rubber, the original. Now I'll remove the golf club.